What is going on, guys? Farzin Vasugian here with you for another episode of the Red Friday live chat. Thank you guys for joining me. It is an honor to do another episode of the Red Friday live chat. Red Friday. Yes, we all love Red Friday. Who doesn't love Red Friday? All right. A lot of things to get into here on tonight's episode of the Red Friday live chat. A lot to get into. Obviously, talking some Chiefs, a big game coming up against the Eagles in a Super Bowl rematch. So a lot of people want to know how the Chiefs are going to look in this one. Obviously, we went over our preview and prediction on Wednesday's episode. So if you haven't had a chance, go check out that episode of the Chief Zone and feel free to listen to everything we talked about on there. And then we will also discuss some other things going on around the NFL. Obviously, a lot of news surrounding last night's game with both teams suffering devastating injuries. The Bengals, obviously, their season is in peril. The Ravens are still in a really great spot right now, but the Bengals are pretty much done. They basically would need like what the Eagles had in 2017 with Nick Foles at this point for Browning. That's what you need if you're the Bengals. But we'll touch on that. I also want to get into the Carissa Thompson thing a little later on because I have some thoughts on it. I would be very curious to know what you guys think a little later on. Bear with me one moment here, trying to sort something out. Whoa, that's okay. Thought I made a mistake there, but let's go ahead and take a look at the playoff picture because I think that's a really good place to start because last night played a big hand in the playoff picture for really the rest of the year, because if the Ravens won, it pretty much put them in the driver's seat to win the AFC North. And it looks like they're on their way, it looks like, even after the Mark Andrews injury. If the Bengals won, then the AFC North would be very wide open, and it would have given the Chiefs a bit of a gap in that conference race, because the Jaguars, they obviously have the Chiefs, that is, have the tiebreaker over them, as well as the Dolphins. So would have been pretty good to see. But hey, nonetheless, so here's where we are. You see the AFC standings right here. I'm not really too worried about the NFC side of things at the moment, but you look at the Chiefs still sitting at number one. Obviously, Monday's game will decide who's going to stay at one, or who could be one and who will be two after the conclusion of Monday Night Football. Obviously, we hope the Chiefs are still there at number one. The Ravens obviously will have one of the top two spots. Look at the Jaguars and the Dolphins, two teams who the Chiefs have already defeated so far this year. And hopefully, if they end up having to face one of those teams again, they can stay victorious. There's a possibility that when it comes to the AFC Championship game, the Chiefs might. It's not a given, because you never know if the Ravens stay at a 2 seed and they continue. But it's maybe not the AFC Championship game, but maybe even like the divisional round. There's a very good chance the Chiefs face a team who they've already played this year, either the Jaguars or the Dolphins. Very likely. I don't know what the odds are on that. If the season ended today, what the odds of that would be, but it's, I would say, very high. Would not shock me one bit if the Miami Dolphins are visiting Arrowhead for the divisional round. AFC Championship, maybe it could be Miami. Obviously, it's not going to be Cincinnati this year. Some people thought it would happen for the third year in a row. I did, but that's not going to be the case this year. So we'll have to we're going to see a new team at the Arrowhead Invitational this year. So we scroll down a little bit here. And you listen, you got a lot of, from number 2 to number 6, you have a lot of 3-loss teams. So obviously a very crowded group there. Then you have the Texans at 5-4. They're obviously just ahead of the Colts. They had the tiebreaker over the Bengals, beating them this past Sunday. The Bill, look at this. I mean, I know this is going to change in less than 48 hours. But look at the 9, 10, 11. The Raiders have the same record as the Bengals and the Bills. Again, I know the Raiders and Bills, they'll have games this weekend, so we'll see. But if you told me, because what was everyone saying? A lot of people still felt like the Chiefs were the top dog in the conference. Now, some people would have said the Bills, some people would have said the Bengals, some probably would have said the Dolphins. But I think a lot of people would agree that the Chiefs are the number one team in the AFC. This is, during the preseason, the Chiefs are the number one team, top dog AFC, and then the Bengals and Bills were really the two biggest threats to Kansas City. Those two teams that everyone thought would be the biggest threats to Kansas City they have the same record as the Raiders. If you told me before the season, going into, well, I shouldn't say going into week 11, but in some sort of, middle of week 11 type of situation, if you told me the Raiders, Bengals, and Bills would all have the same record, I would have thought, wow, maybe the Raiders really did get it together. I would have not expected the Bengals and the Bills to be this bad. And listen, I suppose there's still time for the Bills. Obviously, there's some new hope. A lot of Bills fans said for a few weeks that they need to change with the offensive coordinator, and they got exactly that after Monday Night Football. The Bengals, I mean, listen, even if Joe Burrow was still with the team, and if they somehow won that game yesterday, which who knows, there was still a lot of time left. The Bengals are like a really weird one-dimensional team. So I know a lot of people were saying Burrow was playing great. Okay, it's not like they were lining up the scoreboard either. They were only up by, I think, 3 or 4 points when the injury happened. So there was still a lot of time left to play that game. My point with the Bengals is, even if Joe Burrow was still playing for the team, this team is 0-3 in the division. I think they're 1-4 or 1-5 in the conference, and your only tiebreaker you have for the playoff race is over the Bills, which is a worthless tiebreaker to own right now. It's nice to beat the Bills, don't get me wrong, but I mean, how does that help you? It doesn't. So really, like, the Bengals in every way, they're doomed. We're just being honest here, right? Just being completely honest. So then you have the Chargers, the Jets, and Broncos. I think a lot of people think that the Broncos may have a chance because of the way they've played the past couple of weeks against the Chiefs and the Bills. I don't know, man. Listen, I remember in 2009, the Chiefs had back-to-back big wins over the Raiders. Well, the Raiders wasn't a big win. It's the Raiders. But the bigger win was the following week when they beat the Steelers, the reigning Super Bowl champions at the time. That was the game where Jamal Charles had the opening kickoff return for a touchdown. Andy Studebaker had 2 interceptions on Roethlisberger. One of them almost went for a pick six. So, you'll see situations where bad teams go in a row. The Raiders have won 2 in a row. I mean, listen, I don't think, and by the way, those are 2 very ugly wins. I don't think anybody realistically believes the Raiders are on this big train where they're suddenly, going out there to dominate. And nobody expects that. Nobody. Then you have the Jets, which is probably the last team I'll mention here because the Titans, I like Vrabel, but no. And the Patriots, I mean, that's just a disaster in and of itself. The Jets are kind of an odd team because I guess there's still that glimmer of hope that Rodgers is going to come back. I know he keeps saying that in all these media interviews he does. Some believe it, some don't. But I suppose the Jets are a team that people are keeping an eye on. And most of the Jets have stayed competitive without Rodgers. Probably better than most people thought for sure at this point. So you have that to work with. Brad says the NCAA sucks ass. Yeah. I don't know, man. Listen, I haven't followed that whole Harbaugh thing too closely. I don't know if that's what you're referring to. I have seen on McAfee's show, he has been complaining about the NCAA recently. Hey, I got a question for you guys. What are your thoughts on the Carissa Thompson thing? Because I have some thoughts on this one. And Chris, I see your comment. I'll get to it in a moment. This whole Carissa Thompson thing. So if you missed it, she went on a Barstool Sports Podcast, Part of My Take, the most popular podcast they have with PFT and Big Cat. Yes, those are their stage names. And Carissa Thompson, and by the way, that podcast, in all seriousness, they do a really good job of getting massive names, not just in sports, but out of sports. I think they're the only ones who interviewed the crazy Karen lady from the airplane. Tiffany Gomez, I think is her name. They did like a little bit of a tell-all with her. They're kind of like the Joe Rogan of sports podcasting, where they get some of these significant names in the world of sports, and they also will branch out of sports and get some other names and try to tie it into sports sometimes. But anyway, Carissa Thompson was on, and I'll be honest, I'm not very familiar with her work, but she claims that she has made up reports as a sideline reporter that if a coach does not come out of the locker room in time at halftime, or if she doesn't catch them on time, then she will just make up something and say, "Oh, well, coach, there's my phone. Coach so-and-so said that they need to improve on third down, or they need to pressure the quarterback more, or they need to score more points, or take care of the football." Something where she'll make up quotes that, a typical coach would say. Something that she's been around the sport long enough, I think, to where she can maybe understand what most coaches would think anyway in that situation. Look, is she an evil person? No, she's not. But I do think a lot of the criticism she is receiving is very well valid. Here's where I find it a big deal. There are lots of sideline reporters right now, from Tracy Wolfson to any and every sideline reporter you can think of, primarily female sideline reporters, who are speaking out and kind of defending their journalistic integrity, which I find interesting. Like, do they feel like, because maybe all of these sideline reporters feel like people think they also are lying. They think that Carissa Thompson, because she put this out there, that Carissa Thompson is representing all sideline reporters out there. And that's why when Carissa Thompson put out the statement, it's like, look, you not only have to explain yourself, but you need to kind of clean shit up, because there are a lot of other sideline reporters who people think are not. Listen, I'll give you a simple example here. Okay, you guys know about the Chiefsaholic thing. When people found out what really happened to him, a lot of people were asking me, they're like, dude, are your giveaways legit? Like, how are you getting your giveaways? And listen, I don't blame anyone for asking that. That's kind of a valid thing given what just happened unexpectedly. Kind of the same thing here, where you have a lot of people who are sideline reporters who their journalistic integrities, their ethics are being questioned. People are wondering, do they also make stuff up? Which I think is unfair. I think it's unfair that Carissa Thompson not only put herself in a bad situation, but she also really just took a big dump on sports journalism. Listen, I don't need to get into the details of this, because I know people don't want to discuss this on a page where we talk primarily sports. But look at journalism today. It is in a horrible spot. Okay. And by the way, I'm just telling you right now, as someone who does not pick sides politically, it's on both sides. It truly is on both sides. I mean, you see a lot of bad journalism out there. And here's a non-sports example. I remember when Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather, I think it was the New York Post, in their headline talked about how Conor McGregor got bloodied up against Floyd Mayweather. Not true at all. There was not a single blood shed in that fight. Yet you have a big media outlet saying McGregor was bleeding and everything. It's like, what are you doing? You just had to watch the fight and not say something stupid like that. Listen, I used to be I know, for as much as we joke as to whether or not I'm a journalist or not, which I'm not, by the way. I used to be. And I will tell you right now, and I'm not going to say names, I'm not going to say publications, but I can tell you for a fact right now, in my experience in journalism, there are some bad practice out there that I don't agree with. I will say this publication's name, but I'm not going to say who specifically. When I worked at Bleacher Report, I would do some rankings, and they said, "Hey, look, we like your rankings, but we got to try to spark a reaction from some people. So let's reorder some of the rankings you have." I'm like, no. I don't believe here's my thing. Whenever I talk about sports with podcasting, blogging, I don't do blogging anymore, but with any commentary, I would consider myself as an outside the box thinker for sure. Not intentionally. That's just the way I am. I like to view things on both sides, kind of just get a general big picture view of things and then give my thoughts. There are some people out there who will just have opinions just for click. Like, look at Colin Cowherd. The guy has a new MVP and a new top team every week in the NFL. It's weird. Okay, we've had this discussion before. John has an interesting comment here. The reason we watch these videos is because of how poor journalism is in all parts of the media. So, by the way, I appreciate the kind words, John. Here's my thing. Like, when I started this podcast back in 2007, the Chiefs Zone podcast, that is, I started that, I was 16 years old, but I started that because I wanted that to be my resume to one day hopefully work for a sports talk radio station. Well, fast forward to the year 2023, almost 2024. Isn't podcasting, maybe not everyone has cut up to speed on it. I once did a poll asking what's your favorite podcast or how do you listen to podcasts? But I asked you guys, how do you listen to your podcast? Apple, Spotify, Google. Some people, a lot of you guys actually said you don't listen to podcasts. So there's still some people who maybe aren't with the times in podcasting, but there are also some people who appreciate podcasting more because they just enjoy the content more than they would with talk radio. And listen, I love talk radio. I still listen to talk radio. I've got SiriusXM on my phone. One of my favorite apps on my phone. I'm always one of those people where 90% of my day, if my attention does not need to be, if I don't need to be listening to anyone else, I'll turn on the radio or a podcast. And I think a lot of you guys probably do the same thing. I think a lot of people who work, a desk job for 7-8 hours a day probably do something similar. Look at the Kelsey brothers. They're not journalists by any means, but they do provide an insight to the game, similar to how you would see it on ESPN or Fox Sports. Now, their agenda is obviously different. They talk about themselves, Eagles and Chiefs, and then they'll talk about maybe some other big things going on around the NFL, and a few other topics here and there. But they've got a big podcast out there. Now, is it because they've got a big name? Yeah, that definitely helps. But you see, and again, think about journalism versus bloggers and podcasters. Look at Barstool Sports. Okay, even some of their non-top tier guys at Barstool Sports, they have massive followings online and they have popular podcasts. If you go to the top 100 sports podcasts on Apple or Spotify, you will find a lot of Barstool Sports podcasts out there. A lot of the Barstool Sports content is better than what you see on ESPN and other places. And listen, I've said so many times in the past, people have asked, would you ever go back to sports media or journalism? Hell no. And I'll tell you this right now, would I rather be doing sports podcasting or would I rather be doing a radio station or be working for a radio station? I'd rather be doing sports podcasting. Here, if anyone were to ever ask me, if they said, hey, look, I'm going with so-and-so for journalism, what advice do you have for me? I said, look, go be involved in student media as much as possible and get to know the journalism instructors because they can be a big asset to you. And get to know any other instructors that are involved with extracurricular student media activities. The point being is, after college, if you want to work in sports radio, listen, chase your dream. I'm not going to tell anyone no, but I will say this, and I've given this advice to people, have a podcast ready at hand, okay? And if you can build a following online, and if people like your commentary, promote your podcast on there, and start getting some sponsorships. See these companies right here I've got? See these? I mean, listen, it's no secret. You guys see I'm making some money here. I'll tell you right now, it's not like a lot. It's more of a side gig thing, okay? It's more of a side hustle than anything else. But ultimately, if there are some full-time podcasters who do podcasting, multiple times a week, and not just that, they have a shit ton of sponsors on their podcasts. That's not something I'm quite ready for yet, but hey, that'd be pretty cool if I was. But for those who do that kind of thing, that is their full-time job. They do nothing but podcasts and interviews, and in those episodes, you hear a shit ton of sponsors. There's a possibility a lot of you guys probably scroll through or fast forward, I should say, those advertisements. So to John's comment about, and you mentioned, you enjoy Facebook or YouTube content more than Fox or ESPN. Yeah, a lot of people are that way. I think podcasting, and I'll wrap up the whole thing by saying this. I think podcasting really does provide far more flexibility than what you would see on radio. Look at Pat McAfee. Again, his name probably helps because he was a former NFL player, but it's not like he was the biggest name ever in NFL history. He was just a punter at the end of the day, but he found a way to do something big and make it work. And good for him. I think he's got an awesome life with everything he's doing. Obviously, it's given him a lot of opportunities with WWE, ESPN, College Game Day, and all of that stuff. But to wrap up with the whole Carissa Thompson thing, look, your statement says you never lied, but in that podcast you said otherwise. And I know Barstool Sports is trying to help her out by deleting the post. I'm sorry. In a world where we have all of these screen recordings and screenshots like the Cincinnati Bengals one, you're not really doing yourself any favors. And that statement absolutely did not help whatsoever. Listen, everything eventually kind of dies down. Again, it's not like she killed anybody, okay? But journalistic integrity is a huge deal today. It's been this way for several years. Like I'd say since 2015, it's been a big topic in our world. And here we are getting close to 2024, and it's still an issue of concern to a lot of people. So, I don't think she did herself any favors with that statement. Chris is asking, do you think the passing game will improve on starting Monday Night Football? If it does, the Chiefs will be hard to beat with their defense, online, and running game. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. If the offense picks it up, this is going to be a very tough team to beat. This is going to be a team that nobody wants to play. I'm sure there are some teams and some fans out there that would say, hey, the Chiefs are great, but we're not scared of them. They certainly are beatable, and that's 100% true. But do I think they get the offense going? If there was ever a time to do it, it's this week. Now, that's not the question you asked. The question is, will they improve? You know what, man? With this bye week, with Andy Reid, with Mahomes in your on your team, I'm gonna go yes. I think it has to happen that way. That's got to be what happens. You guys can hear my laundry in the background. I think it gives the option to kind of just like deflect all of that noise in the background, but I don't know, maybe you guys can hear it, maybe not. I think this is the week it has to happen. Mahomes did say in his interview with Peter King that he made a promise this offense that they'll pick it up. They're going to get it going. They have to, because the defense has played so great in these first 9 games, which they have. So this is the time to really wake up and get going, because if you don't, there's a chance you lose the number 1 seed and you could be a 1-and-done in the playoffs. That's what the Chiefs are facing ultimately. And listen, the schedule gets really tough from here on out when you look at the Chiefs. Let me pull that up real quickly. Obviously, you have the Eagles coming up very soon. Bear with me. Sorry. Yeah, you have the Eagles coming up. Then you play the Raiders on the road, which is essentially Arrowhead West. The Chiefs have never lost there. And then after that, you go visit the Green Bay Packers for Sunday Night Football, the Buffalo Bills at home. And then after that, you play the Patriots on the road for Monday Night Football. My God, you have to win that in a blowout. You have to. Then you come back home for a 2-game stretch, the Raiders and the Bengals, and then the Chargers. I'm telling you right now, okay, you got the Eagles. It's going to be a tough one. You still have the Raiders twice. Listen, I'm not a player. I don't need to be underestimating anybody. I'm not a coach. I'm just a fan. That's 2 wins right there. Okay. You have to get those 2 Raiders games. The Packers are not playing good football. You got to win that one. The Bills, Josh Allen's a turnover machine. I don't think a switch at offensive coordinator is really going to help. These are problems we saw even when Brian Daboll was there. Have they gotten worse? Yes, but it's still been an issue before Brian Daboll left to become a head coach for the Giants. So I'm counting that as a must win. Then you have the Patriots, the worst team in the AFC. You got the Raiders. I already mentioned that. Then you have the Bengals. Look, the Bengals, their defense is atrocious right now. They're playing pathetic defense, and they no longer have Joe Burrow. And listen, even if Browning does get things going, who's protecting him? You're not going to survive with that offensive line, okay? And I've even seen Bengals fans online. They're actually admitting to it. They're like, oh, that's what Kansas City Chiefs fans were talking about. That wasn't Kansas City Chiefs fans being bitter haters because Orlando Brown left. No, not at all. I said all along, I'm thrilled Orlando Brown left to the Bengals. I'm glad he left. I was thrilled when he joined the Bengals because I knew that was going to be an Achilles heel. I'm not happy that Joe Burrow got hurt. Not at all. I definitely wanted to beat Joe Burrow. We all know Bengals fans are going to hang on to that 3-1 record because Lord knows that's all they have. But in all seriousness, you have to win that football game. That just became an easier game. So out of the 7 games remaining, the 2 Raiders games, the Packers, the Bills, the Patriots, and the Bengals, you have to win 6. Hold on. How many games is it? 1, 2, 3, 8. My bad. 8. You have to win 6 of those 8 games. I don't want to say with ease because we know how the Chiefs do things sometimes, but you have to at least win 6 of those 8 games. If you lose to Philly and if you lose to the Chargers in week 18, which I don't think will happen, but yeah, you got to win at least 6 of the 8. That'll put you at 13-4. That should give you the 1 seed. 100%. 100%. Let's see. Watch out for the Texans. We could be facing them. Yeah, I agree. Listen, I mean, I mentioned the Bengals and the Bills. They're not that big of a threat anymore. The Texans are a far bigger threat than those 2 teams combined. Hate to see Joe go out like that as a season ticket member. That's part of what I spend my money on. I love that rivalry. Yeah, and listen, I was texting a friend, and she was telling me that, you know, when we beat the Bengals, a lot of people are going to put an asterisk and say it's because there was no Joe Burrow. I don't care. Guys, let's think about this for a second here. Let's say Patrick Mahomes got hurt. God forbid. But if Patrick Mahomes got hurt and the Bengals beat the Chiefs without Mahomes, do you really think Bengals fans would be apologizing because they beat the Chiefs without Mahomes? Do you think the Bengals players would have like some sort of a prayer for the Chiefs because they beat him without Mahomes? No, you win no matter what opposing teams are dealing with. I've said this millions and millions of times. If there's anything I've repeated so many times, it's this: injuries are part of sports in a very unforgiving way. So yeah, are the Bengals going to start losing a bunch of games? Probably. Are they going to lose to the Chiefs in what a lot of people would say is probably the biggest game of the season for 2023? Yeah. Guess what? That's just the way things work, unfortunately. You suffer injuries. This is a very physical sport. This is a very violent sport. And when you get hurt, that's part of it, unfortunately. I'm not saying it's great, but that is the sport. This is a very violent sport. And there are a lot of people. Listen, the Bengals are not the only team in the world to ever deal with injuries. And listen, I think, you know, as a Chiefs fan, props to Patrick Mahomes, man. Like, this guy played with a shit ankle and marched his team down to one of the best second half performances in Super Bowl history. Stayed out there wanted to stay out there in the Jags game. Obviously needed to go get that whole thing taken care of, but the guy fought through what was probably an immense amount of pain. I know the Chiefs look like shit in this game, but Patrick Mahomes played through the flu against the Broncos. I mean, let's be honest here. If anyone has the flu, and even if their job is not physically demanding, they're not going to work for probably various reasons because you don't want to get other people sick, but you do not want to go and play football in that cold weather in Denver with the flu. Nobody wants to do that. So, listen, I'm not saying Joe Burrow's a wimp or anything like that. Not at all. I know there are some people. Listen, it's funny in the sport of MMA, you see a lot of people who say, "Oh, this fighter is scared of that fighter." Are we really accusing fighters of being scared when they're in a sport where they are fighting? I mean, come on. I don't think anyone's scared of anyone in professional sports, especially violent sports like MMA and football. So I don't know. I always think it's funny when people say that kind of thing. Anyway, I know I'm getting off topic here. The point is, look, yeah, you're going to have a big anticipated rematch from the AFC title game, 2 straight AFC title games. And these two teams, they've played each other twice a year when you include the playoffs. But unfortunately, Joe's not going to be there, and the world does not stop turning. The Bengals are not the only team to ever deal with an injury. A lot of teams, the Bengals' own division rivals have been dealing with injury. Deshaun Watson just went out for the season, and so did Mark Andrews of the Ravens. So shit happens, man. That's just the way it works. We lost to the Broncos, nothing locked in. Yeah, Sheila. I mean, listen, we lost to the Colts last year, and the Eagles lost to the Commanders last year. All the best teams lose a game or two they shouldn't lose. But I think in the second half, with the playoff race heating up, I would expect a different kind of intensity from the Chiefs. I would expect them to start taking things more seriously. Not that they weren't before, but they need to be better about all of this stuff. And I expect the offense to really just wake up and stop playing like shit, really. Catch the football, stop committing turnovers, and this offense is going to go far. Improve on the red zone. This offense is going to be much better. Max says, if we beat the Eagles Monday night, you might as well just give us the 1 seed. Yeah, I mean, the Ravens are not too far behind. Now, the Ravens, I think their bye week is the first week of December. So right now they have more wins than us. But the Chiefs still have the 1 seed because they have a better win percentage. That's how that all works. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sit here and say the Chiefs have the 1 seed locked up, but if they do beat a team as great as the Eagles, I get that's probably what you're trying to say, is that if you can back to back beat the Dolphins and the Eagles, then who's to say you can't really beat anyone else the rest of the way. Maybe you'll drop 1 or 2 games, but that's not enough to really hurt your case. And by the way, if the Chiefs do beat the Eagles Monday night, that loss to Denver is going to be a long distant memory. Like, yeah, sure, Broncos fans, I mean, that's their Super Bowl ultimately. But at the end of the day, yeah, a humiliating loss to Denver, but beating them is going to put the Chiefs in position where beating the Dolphins, and not just beating them, holding them to their fewest points all season after everything they've done this year, and then beating the Eagles in a Super Bowl rematch, that's going to really give the Chiefs a lot of respect. And whatever people want to say about the refs and the game is rigged and Vegas is paying them and blah, 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 my team's not winning, so I'm going to cry about it. You can't really deny that anymore with this team. Like, the Chiefs are just going out there and beating teams after team. Listen, look at the Chiefs right now. They already beat the Jaguars. I know that was early in the season, but still they beat the Jaguars and they beat the Dolphins. Those are 2 teams who hold the number 3 and 4 seeds respectively. So people keep talking to you about how the Chiefs have an easy schedule. I mean, they beat the Jags and the Dolphins. Those are both division leaders as far as I know, right? Because I know like Bengals fans, oh, by the way, who are seriously, like, severely quiet and hold on. I think I hear a Bengals fan. Hold on. Oh, okay. Never mind. Okay. Those are Bengals fans right now, okay? That's Cincinnati right now. I mean, they were all over this Facebook page. I haven't heard from a single one. I mean, listen, look, talk all that shit, and then all of a sudden to go away. Especially last year with the AFC title game, they were like, "Oh, Burrowhead," and then they cry about the refs. Like, come on. Anyway, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, Bengals fans. They were bragging, which I find interesting. They're like, "Well, we're in a tougher division, and you're not." Okay, if you're in the best division out there, and if you're this team that's so great, you should have probably been beating all these teams. But no, they're 0-3 in the division. And listen, okay, yesterday they didn't have Burrow, but they had Burrow before yesterday, and they weren't winning divisional games then. They were 0-3, or excuse me, 0-2 lead coming into this week. They only had one conference win up to this point. That's Buffalo. It's not really, it's not great for a resume. So, yeah, I mean, listen, the Chiefs have a first place schedule. They have that every year, and their strength of schedule and their strength of victory is still higher than Cincinnati. So I always find it interesting when people try to discredit the Chiefs as much as they can over like things that don't even like matter ultimately at the end of the day. Boxers were definitely scared of Tyson, some of them anyway. Yeah, okay, yeah, I suppose. I mean, there are like times like in the UFC where you see okay, Khamzat Chimaev, that guy is way too big at welterweight. He's now in middleweight, but okay, I suppose there's some of that where you see teams trying to avoid other teams. Love the noises, yeah. Yeah. Listen, here's my thing. Like, Bengals fans, whenever their team lost, they were just silent. When my team loses, I'm not silent. I give the same energy, win or lose. No one can accuse me of hiding and refusing to talk when my team loses. The only time that ever happened last year was the Colts game, and that's because the live stream was not working. I don't know why. That was a massive coincidence. We ended up doing a live stream later that night, but not as many people because people were already over it by then. But shit, man, I'm still here talking, win or lose. If they would have lost to the Dolphins and Jags, they would say the Chiefs are done. Yeah, I suppose, but that's fortunately not the case. Winning at the end of the day, yeah. Listen, wins do not come easy. And now I know the way the Chiefs are winning is not ideal, and that needs to get cleaned up. And I think they can start doing that Monday night. They have to start at Monday night because you're not going to beat the Eagles 17-14 or 21-14 like you did the Dolphins. And if that happens, I will come on here and eat crow and tell you guys I was wrong about that. But I will still say the Chiefs offense needs to get going. All right. Those are all the things I wanted to talk about. I will say this real quickly about the Bengals with the whole Joe Burrow injury report thing, because that is the thing. And a lot of people are tying it into sports betting because of how big sports betting is now compared to, 3 or 4 years ago. I'll say this. I don't care about the sports gambling portion of it. If you bet on sports, there's a good chance you already saw that on Twitter, so you would have already known anyway. But what if that tweet was not out there that the Bengals tried to delete and hide? Well, that's actually a valid question. I don't know. You wouldn't, and I think that's why a lot of people are wondering. What is the purpose of an injury report if you're not going to be honest about things? I think Bill Belichick is very famous for trying to work around the injury report and put things that don't need to be out there. So, and by the way, Zach Taylor was told that the wrist injury he had was not related to the one he suffered in the game, which tells you, so there was an injury. You just acknowledged there was an injury, maybe not the same one, which I don't believe, but you're telling me there was an injury and it was not on the injury report. Okay. I mean, whatever. just kind of depends how dumb you are and if you believe that stuff. Yeah, you might be able to like fool a casual fan, but you're not going to fool the people who follow the sport so closely. Angel's asking about Jalen Hurts. He's not on the injury report as far as I see. It's Dallas Goedert, Justin Evans, Cam Jurgens, Grant, I'm not even going to try to say that last name, and Bradley Roby. So, yeah, I mean, I know people are talking about Jalen Hurts, but it appears that he's going to be okay. If the Chiefs had some of the offense as last year and this season, easiest run to the Super Bowl, man, maybe, especially with all the other injuries going on. Hopefully the Chiefs can stay clear of that. That would be huge. Again, it's part of sports, man. You can't really apologize that other teams are struggling with this. The Chiefs have their own issues right now. And by the way, it's not like the Chiefs did not have these issues last year. Look at all the wide receivers who got hurt last year for the Chiefs. Juju, McColl, Kadarius Toney. A lot of them were missed a significant amount of time last year at different times. So it happens, man. And all three of them got injured in the AFC Championship game against the Bengals. And Mahomes completed a pass to a receiver who had not been targeted all year in Marcus Kemp. Like, how many people can tell you who Marcus Kemp is? Probably very few. So you get the idea, man. You got to find ways to work around it. Great teams find ways to do that. That's what great teams tend to do. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Shorter episode of the Red Friday live chat. Appreciate those who joined us for this episode of the Red Friday live chat. I will be back on Sunday. I'm sorry, not Sunday. I've done that 3 times this week now, including the podcast. Monday before the game, we will do a pregame live chat. Halftime, as always, we'll do our halftime live chat. And then after the game, late Monday night, yes, we will be doing a late night podcast. We'll do the Chiefs Zone podcast live, recapping Monday Night Football. So be sure you guys stay tuned for that. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the Chiefs Zone podcast. It's on every podcasting network out there, website out there, I should say. So just search my name or just search the Chiefs Zone, and you should be able to find it on there. All right. Hey, thank you, guys. Appreciate everyone who joined for this episode of the Red Friday live chat. If you guys don't mind, please give the video a like and just share the video as well, even though we're no longer going to be live. If it's archived and if you can share it, it can still get more eyes on there. So that would be greatly appreciated if you guys could do that for the live chat. Would be greatly appreciated. Definitely helps out the Facebook page. Hey, thank you guys again. I'm out of here. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace out.